Welcome to Garden Wise Adventures. My name is Malie, and today is near the end of February, and I decided it was time to see if I could make another meal that was almost fully out of my own garden, out of things that I have grown and out of things that I have preserved. And I'm going to be able to do it. I wanted to show you a soup that I'm going to make that's out of the stuff that I harvested. But before we do that, I wanted to show you where I'm harvesting stuff right now. Now, I will attach a couple of videos that talk about my indoor growing experiments, but I have been growing a lot of food indoors. I've been able to, with this last harvest a couple of days ago, I was able to harvest enough lettuce for myself for 3 days, my niece, and my next door neighbor. They've been growing fantastic. They are in pots and in potting soil, and I fertilize them every once in a great while and keep them on the automatic waterers, and they're doing really well. It's been really good. And you can see how much lettuce I harvested from that. So for today's meal, we're going to be using my Swiss chard, and look how big that leaf is. It is absolutely gorgeous. We're going to be using my Swiss chard, my kale, and chiji misai. And just wait until you see how much I got off of this. Look at those, they're gorgeous. The taste is really good too. It compares to everything that I've grown outside except for the stuff that I've grown in the winter. And look at all that kale, isn't that great? But I'll show you a clip of what my outdoor hoop houses look like. The veggies in there aren't really growing. They're not dying, but they do freeze and they're not really growing, so there's not a lot left to harvest. But what there is out there is super sweet. It does taste better than the stuff that is grown inside, but the stuff that I've been growing inside has tasted really good. Now look at all that I've harvested. I have my lettuce, a little bit of dill, and this huge colander of greens. And this is what I'm going to be using in my meal today. Now I just wanted to show you what I have outdoors in my grow beds under my hoop houses. And even though they've been double layered hoop houses, it's just gotten way too cold for them. They've pretty much frozen. Last time I came out and opened it up, all the leaves were frozen solid. This one has fared just about the same. So I don't think I'm going to be harvesting much out of here. This one did a little bit better. I think part of the reason this one did better is because it is west facing and it's on a slope, so the cold air just flows past it. Now it's been a few days since that harvest, and let me show you what I have here and tell you what I'm going to make. Okay, so I'm going to remove the stuff that is not from my own garden. Of course, the salt, pepper, the meat, and the olive oil is out. But everything else here is stuff that I've harvested and preserved. I still have onions left from my harvest in July, and as you can see, they are absolutely great, perfectly firm, wonderful. I have some garlic that was also harvested. As you can see, there's a few cloves in each one of them that are going bad, but that happens every year. And I think that comes from actually when I dried it. It's not age related because they will last. There are a lot of bulbs that will last all the way through until I harvest next year. Right here is the kale that I harvested that I just showed you. Here's my beautiful Swiss chard and chiji misai. We've got chopped bell peppers from my garden last year. And then I created a video on how I roast and puree my tomatoes, squash, onions, and peppers. So this is a soup base that I use a lot. And I still have a lot of it in my freezer. Here's chopped squash. We've got some tomatoes that I canned and a little bit of my banana peppers. So really, actually, what I'm going to do is cook the meat, cook the sausage, saute some onions and garlic, and then throw everything in the pot. And then we will have a tomato garden veggie soup, and it's going to be really good. Now, I don't have an exact recipe, but I'll put down in the description the ingredients that I use, and then you can adjust it for your needs. Now the first thing that I'm going to do is get my garlic and onions chopped up. Now you can see right here that we've got a rotten one, so I've got to take care of that. Maybe the one next to him is a little bit rotten. So this clove is mostly good. It's just got that dry patch right there. I will cut that off and then use the rest. There, now it's usable. There's the garlic. Next we'll do the onions. This is a Spanish sweet yellow. Isn't that gorgeous? I just started the seeds to grow my next crop. Now we'll add a little bit of olive oil and saute the onions. Now once these are soft and nicely caramelized, we're going to add the garlic. Once the garlic is cooked down a little bit, we're going to add the sausage. Now the meat is almost cooked, and it's at this point that I like to add my spices, and I wanted to show you what I'm going to use. There's the obvious salt and pepper, we're going to use those, and then we're going to use my homegrown basil. Now this is how I store my basil. I dry it, pull the stems off the leaves, and just stick them whole into this basil jar, and I'll show you how I use it from there. So first we're going to crack the pepper. Then we're going to add the salt. Then I'm going to take an unspecified amount of basil in my hand. This is just usually, I've used it so often that this is the amount that I use. And I'm going to rub it between my hands, pull out any of the stems, and that's how I use my basil. This is what it looks like. And we'll just stir that in. Now, I am the only person in this house that's going to be eating this. So this is too much meat for the amount of soup that I'm going to be making. So I usually when I get to this point have two options. I can double the ingredients for the soup and then freeze half the soup, or I can only use half the meat and freeze the meat and use it in a different recipe, and that's the option that I'm going to use today. So I'm going to use half of this for the soup. Now it's time to chop this gorgeous kale and Swiss chard. I'm going to leave the chichi-misai for another meal. I'm going to keep the stems. I actually like the stems. Just chop those a little bit smaller. Now that looks like a lot of greens, but it's going to cook right down. So let's dump everything into the pot and cook up our soup. Now, isn't that a delicious bowl of goodness? It's almost done. We're going to put some in a bowl and I'm going to try it out. So here it is, all ready to eat. I love the colors in it. Now, as I said, this is not a specified recipe. This is just something that I came up with one day. And another thing that you could add to this that I've done before that is absolutely delicious is black beans. You could add black beans to this. Instead of the tomato soup, you could use turkey stock. I always cook 2 turkeys for Thanksgiving. one specifically to freeze and to have for stock. And it's really tasty both ways, just to use, just dump all the vegetables that you have in your freezer in there, and it's really good. I didn't add the black beans this time because I'm really not in the mood for them today, but maybe I'll do that next time. So now let's try it out. I absolutely love it. So this is a good way to use up vegetables that you have frozen or preserved from your garden last season. You can also experiment with growing vegetables indoors. There's a lot of ways to do it. I'll link a video up above that shows you how I'm growing the vegetables indoors. And it's just a wonderful thing to have in the wintertime when you don't have a lot going on outside. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you do enjoy my videos, please like and subscribe, share them with your friends, and go have a wonderful garden adventure.